or welcome back to another session. Today I am going to be speaking about lust. Now, most people are familiar with the emotion of lust, but maybe like you, when I was still very young, I was almost conditioned to perceive lust as a negative emotion, an emotion that was not useful to have, or an emotion that was quite selfish. The latter has some validity to it. However, I believe, and this is a personal view, that one of the most important emotions that both sexes need to understand is lust. I think it's also one of the most important emotions that a man should have between the age of 18, when he turns into a man, all the way up to 35, with the intention of substituting that lust for love from 35 and above. Now, there's several reasons why I make such a statement. I've opined on some of such reasons in previous videos. In any case, today's session will be my attempt to connect lust with what I discussed in the previous video, where I talked about the interesting dilemma that most men face when in a relationship, whether that be dating or in a committed relationship. That question is, how long do we have to wait? How long do we have to wait before we get some tail when we're pursuing a woman, or in a relationship, in a committed relationship? How long do we have to wait to get what we believe was whether the unsigned or the signed agreement of the union? I will try and convince you, I hope I'm successful at that, but I will try and convince you that lust for men is a better emotion to have between 18 and 35, and even beyond the age of 35 into a committed relationship. I should start by saying that lust is not infatuation, and it's certainly not love. Those are two separate emotions. In any case, I'm going to use this example or this analogy. If I walk up to you and let's say I meet you in a bar or in a restaurant or in a supermarket, and I show some interest in wanting to have a second meeting with you, either asking you for your number or asking you out for a drink or for a meal, or showing some interest by chatting you up. The moment I do that, the emotion that drives my decision is not love, it's lust. Primarily because for a man, dating equals sex. For us, the purpose for dates, the reason we go out on dates, is simply because we want to have sex. We are driven primarily by our, you could say, genitalia. We're driven by lust, a desire to either see you naked or to have the opportunity to experience you naked. That lust for a man is essential. When we're dating, that lust is also necessary from our perspective in relation to what a woman should have. So if I were to meet you, and let's say you, for some reason, I wouldn't know why, but let's say for some reason, you have a loving tendency towards me upon meeting me, that would be the wrong emotion that I would want you to have, primarily because I, the man, I'm looking for sex. And in order for you to give me sex, you need lust. If there is love, there is a tendency for you, the woman, to slow things down, especially if you are single, because you have the intention of perhaps prolonging the relationship beyond something casual. So it's not unusual for women to say, I would like to slow things down, or I like you very much, but I'm not quite ready to give my body to you. Obviously, from experience, most women wrongly believe that once they have sex with a man too early, that is a turn up for most men. I believe I addressed this in the prior session, in which I said that nothing could be further from the truth. If a man enjoys your company, if a man has had sex with you, if the sex was good, it's instinctive in our nature to want to have it for the second time, or to have it multiple times. So the reason we do not call back, the reason we go AWOL, the reason we go quiet, the reason we become non-commutative and non-responsive is not because you gave it too early. It's more so because perhaps we find you boring, sex was terrible, the experience wasn't memorable, we have other commitments, it was meant to be a drive-by thing. It has less to do with you giving sex or the timing of when sex was put on the table. Most women believe that if they give out sex too early, they might come across as being somewhat loose and somewhat slutty. I said in the prior session that is what we want. For men, dating equals sex. The reason we go on dates is to get tail. We're not going there to listen to you talk about your pet projects, what you like doing, the books you enjoy, your hobbies you enjoy, your political views and beliefs. We have no interest. And in most of the time, we sit through, listening patiently, waiting patiently just to get what we came for. But we have to play that charade. We have to play that act of feigning interest. What we have in mind is lust. What we've come with is lust. In any case, we hope that you are loose and slutty, because it means that you're not overwhelmed by the possibility of love. Because love has a way of introducing time into any relationship, especially early in the relationship. It has a way of slowing things down. When you start to feel overwhelmed, if there is love, you slow things down. If there is lust, you rev things up. Our hope is that there is lust and for things to be revved up very quickly. So we don't judge you by how quickly you have sex with us. The quicker for us, the better, because we both can decide whether we want to be with each other or whether we want to see you again. Now, there is an interesting thing that occurs when the emotion of lust is at play. Like a flame, all candles burn out. And so lust has a burnout period. Love can burn for eternity. Lust, on the other hand, has a period. It has a burnout phase. And what we tend to do then is we either reignite the lust at the end of the burnout phase, or we convert the lust into something else. That could be codependency, that could be love, that could be something, familiarity, something we're used to, but we have to convert it. If we do not convert lust, it slowly burns out, and eventually it fades out, it fades away into something that we cannot define. There are times when, if it fades away, it becomes resentment. So we get irritated by seeing you, or when we see you. And that is simply because we haven't converted that emotion in its useful burn period into something long-term. Now, one of the questions women usually ask is, why does he go cold? Or why did he go cold? Or why we cheat? Why has he suddenly moved on to someone else? Strangely, a man's desire for sex. And a man's lust can be so powerful that in the first few encounters, we can present ourselves in a very disingenuous way. We present ourselves as though we are in love. The passion, the intensity, the commitment, the use of words, the flamboyancy. We're performing an act. In better terms, we are performing an art. We're doing all of that sometimes subconsciously because of that emotion that is driving us, which is lust. So sometimes we go cold simply because we didn't convert to that emotion of lust. So it naturally dies out, or it becomes somewhat of a resentful feeling, so we just avoid you, or we move on to someone else. Now, one of the things I would like to make clear in today's session, unlike what most people think, I am of the view that, well, first of all, let me say that for those perhaps who are not familiar with the two separate groups I refer to, you have the dating marketplace and you have what I call the marriage marketplace. And in the marriage marketplace, I am putting in all the derivatives of marriage: cohabitation, civil partnership, or people who are just living together, but particularly people who are in a mono relationship. Two different groups. Irrespective of what group you find yourself, the desire you should want, if you are a man, is lust. That should be the driving desire. That should be the driving emotion. During the dating phase, you want it to be lust because that is what keeps you interested. That is what keeps you active in constant pursuit. Very similar to a lion chasing a gazelle. However, during the pursuit, that is lust. Once the lion has actually had his fill, that lust is diluted. So, one of the things we do is look for ways through which we recharge or refill that lust. Now, we do not do that independently of the woman. Most of the time, the woman is the one who does most of the work for us. Now, I'll give you a good example. When we meet you, there could be a desire we have already to get tail, but most of the time, we are reacting to a stimuli that is external. And that stimuli is you. And that could be the shape of your waist, the size of your breasts, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, your styling, the way you, perhaps we've seen you a few times, and the way you change your attires and the way you present yourself. It creates that longing to have you. Like someone who is hungry and you put that in a plate of steak. As soon as you've had the steak, you're no longer hungry. However, in about 6 hours, if I can put you through an exercise program that causes you to burn all those calories, I can guarantee that you will be just as hungry as you were before you had the steak the first time. Similarly, women, through their presence, their inspiration, their being feminine, beauty, youth, you arouse a man's lust and you replenish a man's lust. Now, we do that also, but you do most of the work. Now, this means that, in my opinion, one of the questions that we struggle with is what we want. I'm of the view that what we should want is lust. During the dating marketplace and encounter, and also in the marriage or when the union has begun. And let me explain this a little bit further. I think the experience of what most women get to partake of is a man who is longing for them. Most women would also say that once the union has begun, there happens to be, or there tends to be, a decline in his desirability or how much he longs for the woman. Most of the time, and that applies because the lust quotient is reducing, partly because the woman is not doing what she did early days to keep the man's attention going. Now, I said before that lust is what you want in the dating marketplace. Unlike what most people think, love is not what we bring or what we should have when we are in a committed relationship. It should also be lust. However, we want you, the woman, to have love for us. We want you to have the same lust as we have during the dating phase so that we are in synergy. However, when we move to the more committed relationship, a woman should want the man to maintain his lustfulness towards her, but to turn down his lustfulness towards other women. You want him to see you as the most attractive thing and the one he longs for. But you do not want him to have that same feeling towards other people. The mistake most women make is they think they want the man to be in love. Well, when a man goes into love, he starts to make irrational decisions. He starts to do things that are, in my opinion, quite stupid. His behavior changes. The intensity, the ferocity, the frequency, the passion starts to reduce. And that is simply because he has substituted lust with love. Whereas if he maintains lust, recognizing that it doesn't take a lot to please a man, and generally, men, we stay. If we can maintain the lust we have for you, like we did at the early stages of the relationship, if we can keep that going during the relationship, what you then find is like a flower that blossoms. You have a continuous blossoming of the relationship because the intensity remains, the frequency remains, the amplitude of his intensity, his passion, his drive, effectively that, you might call it the possessive or the possessed spirit that has taken over him, which just wants to rip your clothes off and do crazy stuff to you, certainly consensually. You want that to remain. The moment he substitutes that with love, in ways that I cannot explain, that lustful feeling will start to grow again, like a seed puts in the soil. Suddenly it will turn into a sapling and suddenly it pops through the soil. However, more often than not, that new sapling will be for another woman. Usually, we do not know who that woman is. We just know that desire is brewing and we have substituted love for lust towards you. Therefore, like a void, like a vacuum, the lust will refill where it once was, and more often than not, that energy is redirected to someone else. So, what we want is lust from you during the dating phase. What we bring is lust. As we move into the relationship, what we should bring should be lust. Because to be in love for a man is quite easy. But what we should expect from you is a combination of love and lust, so that we feel desired. Most of the time in relationships that I know, where men have moved out of the boundaries of their union to meet a need, it has come not because the wife, the partner, the girlfriend, the significant other does not love them. It has come more so because she has no lust. And most women do not recognize or realize what that means. That lust is the same lust you had early days. The one that made you wear very, very arousing attires, perhaps go to his house with no undies, dress in a very seductive way. The one you had when you went on different dates and you did different things. So as soon as that starts to dwindle, a man instinctively has a need to be wanted, just like a woman has a need to be wanted. So what we bring and what we have is lust. That's all we have. Women want us to change. This is a mistake that I would recommend most men do not make. You've heard me say before that between 18 and 35 for a man, you should focus 95% of your time on your dreams, on your goals, your education, your profession, and being your best self. You shouldn't consider marriage. You should not consider mono relationships or moving in with someone until you've achieved your major dreams, your major goals. Now, in order for you to do that, you must remain undistracted. Lust is not easily distracted. Love is easily distracted. So I recommend you stay out of love, primarily because women, relationships, can be dream killers. They can take you away from your dreams. They can cause you to sabotage or abort a dream you have because of love. Whereas lust can be powerful, it can be expressive and explosive. However, if you're dedicating only 5% of your time towards relationships during that age range, the likelihood of making a big mistake is much, much less. Now, one of the other reasons I recommend that before age 35, that you avoid any form of love is simply because we know from the data, from statistics in the United Kingdom, the earlier you get married, and let's say early being 18, the higher the likelihood of divorce. As a matter of fact, we know that 1 in every 2 marriages in the UK will end in divorce. However, for those who get married very young, before 24 or 25, the failure factor increases from 50% to 85, sometimes to 80%, sometimes 85%. So it's much higher. And that is primarily because at a younger age, you're not mature. Men mature very, very slowly. For some strange reason, we mature very slowly. What we believe to be love is not what it is. Usually, and this is a personal opinion, I would recommend to women not to believe any man who professes love to her before age 35. Because I don't think a man understands what love means or is until at least age 30. And it takes them till about 35 before he comes to the realization of the responsibilities that come with love. Perhaps the most important point I can make with this is that love is a choice. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. And we do not understand the choice we're making. And I'm not referring to just making a decision. I'm saying the choice of what it requires to say, I love someone. I recommend you delay professing those words until 35. Because I can tell you that when I turned 35, I realized that I'd never been in love before. I'd never fallen in love before. Whatever emotion I thought I had was simply lust, converted into something more long-standing. It wasn't love. I was too young. At 25, 26, 27, I was way too young to understand what love really means. So, the younger you are as a man or as a woman, the higher the likelihood of whatever decision you're making on the grounds of love, the higher the likelihood that that decision will be a failure. So I recommend you delay that for men until 35. And for women, you delay until age 28. So you do not get married for a woman until you've achieved your dreams. And you've given yourself until at least age 27, which means you can start considering marriage from 28. You do not move in with a man until such a time. you do not get pregnant until such a time as a minimum. And even when you get married, assuming you get married at 28, that you wait for at least 3 years until 30 before you start reproducing. Because for most people, we're overwhelmed with a feeling we think is love, but it's not. And if you can certainly get married at 28, and at 30 you decide this is not for me, you can leave without having created children, which usually becomes one of the reasons why most parents stay together, although there is no love and there is no lust. Now, lust normally has from my experience, has a 6 months window, which is why I have said in one of the earlier sessions that for most young men, you want to be doing what I call rotation dating. Why buy the cow when you can still have the milk? I talked about leasing rather than owning. There is no need for you to assume the responsibility of a relationship when you can get all the benefits without being in that union. Therefore, I say, well, just date every 6 months, and if you have a need to upgrade, like a car, just upgrade. So lust normally will last about 6 months. It can extend to a year. But after that period of time, you start to find that the power, the intensity starts to fade. And then it needs to be recharged. Again, as I alluded to earlier, the way it is recharged comes from 2 separate sources: the man himself and the woman herself. A woman does more, I would say, in my opinion, about 85%, between 80 and 85% of the recharging is done by the woman. How you dress, by staying sexy, by staying attractive, by having variety in how you both experience each other, by staying interesting and exciting and fun. I think the key word is fun. Easy to be around and fun. And just keep that going and not becoming complacent. Dating like you've just met for the first time. At the end of the 6 months, you look for a way to rekindle the feeling you had in the first month, and you start again. The people who have long-term mono relationships that are very successful are those who have mastered the art of knowing how to reinvent, renew, recharge, and be re-inspired in the same relationship. And for some people, people have mastered the art of becoming adventurous. So it's the same person after 5 years of marriage. You bring in new things to spice up the union. So it's the same as having a lustful affair with 6 different people, but it's the same man. 6 different people, but it's the same woman. Simply because you mastered the art, both of you mastered the art of remaining lustful for both or for each other, and remaining interesting and interested in the other person. Now, dating and marriage are 2 separate marketplaces. And therefore, when we date men, we come into the relationship purely on lust. Women, therefore, should not deceive themselves in thinking that there's something more that we bring to the table other than lust. We do not, I guess this is an interesting point to make. We hear what you say, but we do not hear what you say until we've actually had the opportunity to lay with you. Something I have found women don't really understand. Until we've seen you naked, and until we've laid with you, it's like a trumpet blowing sounds, but we can't. But the trumpet is being blown by an amateur user. Quite frankly, we find irritating. We'll rather have you say nothing until we have sex. Now, once we've had sex, it's almost as though the same trumpet is passed on to a more experienced user, and suddenly we can enjoy the melody. Because until we've actually slept with you, we can't really hear what you're saying. It goes in through one ear and leaves the other way. Now, we will perform. I call it the art of deceit. We'll keep notes just to make sure we come across as being responsive and thoughtful and interested. We'll play all the game we have to play just to get in your pants. Once we turn from dating to marriage, ideally the man wants to keep that lust going for the woman, but he's in many ways forced to turn it down and to move into love. Sometimes that it comes with recognizing the role you now assume as a father, as a husband, as opposed to a boyfriend or a date. Now this brings me to what we discussed in the prior session, which had to do with how long we as men have to wait. Most women, wrongly in my opinion, tend to believe that they have the golden vagina, that the buck stops with them. And for this reason, it's almost as though you have something you ration out as a way of controlling the man. My view has been, if you play such a game, it becomes a game of odds. The longer you hold out, the more we hold on to get a return on investment. But as soon as we get that, we move on because we think it's been a waste of time. It's been a game of manipulation and mockery, which is why we never stay. Now, I'm not suggesting you give it up too early, but I'm simply saying we can read through when a game is being played, because when you withhold sex during the dating phase, we know someone else got sex from you much faster, much quicker, much more openly. And therefore, we're waiting to just get what we deserve and we move on. When you withhold sex in a mono relationship, we believe that's selfish. We also recognize that there is someone out there who will meet that need for us without any particular requirement. And so the risk that both parties play is that you hurt each other when you play games. I'll conclude by simply saying, come to the conversation in good faith. If you're a man, just be honest and say what you want. And don't play games. Be open, be frank, be direct, and be honest. As a woman, recognize that the power you believe you have was once powerful. Today, in the modern West,